that. So Katie, just let me know when it's up.
Okay, we're live.
All right, thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tullahoma. Today is Sunday, February 6th. So welcome to all of you who are present at church, to those of you on Zoom and on the live stream. So we'll start with a reading that is the Community Means Strength by Starhawk. We are all longing to go home to some place where we have never been, a place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses of from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people to whom we can speak with passion without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up as we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength to do the work that needs to be done. Arms to hold us when we falter. A circle of healing, a circle of friends, someplace where we can be free. So we'll now go to our Chalice Lighting and another reading.
The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. This flame lights our way back together again from our separated winter lives, and it lights our way forward into this new church year of promise and renewal.
And now we go to announcements. So are there announcements? If you have an announcement, raise your hand. So are there announcements at church?
I'm not seeing any at the moment. Oh, Carrie, I'm sorry.
Our speaker next Sunday will be our own Gene Jones, and I'm not sure what his topic is, but it'll be good.
All right. Thank you.
And will it be in person?
I'm not sure about in person.
Okay.
I'm not sure about that. I will try to find out between now and then.
All right. Anything else at church?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Here on Zoom, are there announcements? Do we have the Thursday night group still going?
Thursday night is Rick. I don't, you know, why don't you talk to Rick now?
Oh, yeah, since Chuck isn't here, Tom and I will jointly speak up and invite you all to join us 7 p.m. for the ongoing TED Talk-based discussions, at least in theory. Y'all come. We started 7 and we're normally over by about 9.
All right, thank you, guys.
Are you going to maybe come up with a topic that we may shift topics, and Rick has been proposing.
Oh, well, you know, that's up for discussion. I have some thoughts about looking at things a little differently, but that's up to the group.
All right. Thank you, guys. I have any other announcements? I have one, and it's the COVID numbers, and I get good news. And this is the number as of a week ago yesterday. So once again, the Department of Health is putting these out on, I think, Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, and it's for the previous Saturday. So 2 weeks ago, somewhere in that week, it looked like we peaked on Saturday, the 22nd of January. We were at 315 cases in our local 7-county area. Then a week ago, it was down to 252 cases. So it appears, you know, we have peaked, we're over the hump, headed down, which is good, but there's still lots of cases out there. Still be careful, but good news is we appear to be over the hump of this surge. Any other announcements? One final announcement about supporting the church. If you wish to financially support the church, you can send a check to the UU Church of Tullahoma, and the address is P.O. Box 331 here in Tullahoma, 37388. Anything else? All right, we'll do a responsive reading, and Cass is going to read that. So go for it, please.
Okay, thank you. Today's responsive reading is titled, Today I Choose Life. Every morning when I wake up, I can choose joy and happiness or negativity and pain. To feel the freedom that comes from being able to continue making choices is the important thing in living. Today, I choose to feel life, not to deny my humanity, but to embrace it.
All right, thank you. So we'll now introduce our speaker. So today, our speaker is Daniel Saylor, and I believe the topic is Eckankar, a religious experience. So Daniel, it's all yours.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Well, okay, fine, we're just gonna try to cover you up. We don't wanna see your shiny face.
You want me to get behind there too?
Maybe that'll tell that, yeah, much better. Okay.
Oh, well, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thanks a lot for.
Take your mask off if you want.
Oh, thanks.
yes, for speaking.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me out this Sunday. I think it's really special that you guys invite other groups in for your service to hear other things. So, in a lot of ways, I think we're kindred spirits, although probably after I'm done, you're probably going, no, not so much. So I guess I just thought I would start maybe just like, okay, if we just gave you 2 minutes to explain Eckankar, let's get the big picture. Then I'll kind of maybe go back a little bit and just say a little bit about myself and just kind of my little journey here with Eckankar. So I guess the crux of it is in Eckankar, we believe our true selves is soul. In other words, we're not human beings with a soul. We are soul. That's the true self. And that soul is a divine spark of God. And I think the biggest thing there for us is just a belief that soul exists because God loves it, right? So all life stems from God's love. And I'm looking at my notes here. So in that vein, we look at our experiences here then on earth is really just a big school, where soul comes to have experience, manifests here to have experiences, to unfold spiritually, and eventually the term we use is to return home to God, right? There was a quote there, a phrase there in that quote that kind of spoke to that, right? But it's just that returning to, I guess, that knowingness of God's presence and everything. So that does lead us to the conversation of karma and reincarnation is one of our beliefs in Eckankar, right? So we come back. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So for myself, I first found Eckankar when I was 16, which was almost 44 years ago. And I was like, where did the time go, right? So I've been, at this for quite a while. And so I was raised in California. And, I just had this yearning. There's just this desire for truth. And probably, the fact that you guys are in like a church like this, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? There was just something more, something, the term we use in Eckankar is a call of soul, just feeling that call. So kind of, wasn't raised in a strong religious household. My mom's Japanese. Met my dad and he was in the service and things. So I don't know what she grew up believing. It was basically World War II Japan, right? So it's probably some kind of Shintoism or something. But she's, pretty much a Christian now. My dad was Midwestern, Lutheran, German. But the thing was, he liked to worship at the altar of the great outdoors. So on any given Sunday, we would have been out camping, boating, water skiing, whatever, much to the rest of my dad's family's chagrin, right, that we weren't on church on Sunday. So I always had this affinity for Christianity, but, we weren't strong in that way. So anyway, I had that yearning, was looking for something, and found one of the Eck books, and it was like, this is it. And so I started just taking to it, and in those days, most of the books were written by Paul Twitchell, who was the modern-day founder of Eckankar. He was the title for the spiritual leader of Eckankar is the Mahanta, the Living Eck Master. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit here, but it's an inner and outer master, so we work with him on the inner planes, dream state, things like this. But then, outwardly, he's just the guy. He writes books and gives talks and things like that, right? It's not I'm going to talk more about it, but it's not really a position of worship. It's one of respect, because we all have that potential. We're all heading there to become spiritual masters, right, in our own right. But there was a lot in those books at that time. There's a lot of talks of this concept of soul travel, of like out-of-body experience and these kinds of concepts. And so I was laying there one night and I was thinking, because about a few months before I found the books, I had this experience where I was laying in bed and I felt my arm raise up out of my body, but I was looking down and it was like my arm hadn't been moved, So I was kind of startled, but I just kind of didn't think much of it, some weird half awake, half dream state or something. So with all this reading about the soul travel and stuff, I thought, I wonder if I could do that. And so I kind of looked down, and sure enough, I felt my arm raise up, although, it was still. And then suddenly there were these two rings of light in my room, and one was gold, and the other one was this blue outer light that was kind of like on fire. And there's just these waves of, I just call it divine love, right? This great feeling coming from it. And then I got these images of like files being moved, file cabinets and things like this. And I remember saying to myself, my karma is being rearranged. And then there were these like flip cards, and there were these images on these flip cards, and I kind of knew those images were like the major challenges for this lifetime, And so, again, I'm just 16 years old, so I got up in the morning, I was like, whoa, that was cool. Or, I don't know what jargon we used back then, right? But, what do they say about youth is wasted on the young or something? Kind of thing. But of course that led to a couple of things, right? And one, that, hey, there's something to this path of Eckankar. I guess the other part was just the idea of karma, because I had no real exposure to these things, reincarnation and karma. I remember there was a Laurel and Hardy episode where Laurel did something and the barn crashed down on them, and Laurel and Hardy floated up as little angels. And then at the next scene, they were like, there was these two horses or donkeys by the fence, one bigger than the other. I think they had the little hats on, It's like another fine mess, So that was really my only exposure to like what reincarnation was, right? And I couldn't buy into the idea that, we would die and come back as a horse or something like this, But anyway, it kind of started me on this understanding. And so even though, again, I'm young, I don't really, I'm doing all the things that a 16-year-old would do, but inwardly, right, there was that part that was, that understood it. I knew exactly what it meant about the karma being rearranged. In other words, I knew I came in for a particular purpose, spiritual purpose in this lifetime, and that things were getting moved around for that. I think the other thing too was, and again, this idea of a spiritual master. Again, I had no concept of these things. Maybe if you're from Eastern religions or whatever, you would have more familiarity with that. But I knew that presence of that inner guide, was there. So, I guess to talk about it, it's like, so it's, what place then, as far as living a life as an Eckist does, this idea of reincarnation and remembering past lives are. And it's a lot like, some of the things that I've read in your materials, right? We really respect the idea that we're all individuals, each, this idea that soul is a spark of God. You are unique in that creation, right? None of us can experience God in the same way, or going to experience God in the same way. So it's the same way with things like reincarnation. Is it really important to remember our past lives or not remember it? And it's different situations, and then each individual is going to be different. I've met a lot of individuals, they can remember stuff, details and, panoramic views of past lives. And there's that whole thing, I think I was this queen in a past life. I was like, no, you're actually the handmaid. But was I the favorite handmaid? That kind of, right? It's like, it's not really understanding, what the big picture is. For me, I always joke that, I did a complete survey of my past lives in a past life. So I don't really have to do that this life. Because it's a lot of work, right? Sometimes to kind of piece things together, because you'll get little bits of information. And, ultimately, one will argue, well, you got to live in the present moment anyway, But the benefit sometimes of understanding a past life is, if you're going through something, a challenging thing in this lifetime, maybe a challenging relationship, or even, at work or whatever, those are sometimes those things, the seeds were created in the past, right? And so being able to maybe see a past life, just the knowledge of it, seeing what created the situation can help you kind of, avert things. But also, I think sometimes getting in touch with that occurrence in the past, it's kind of like can help dissipate the karma from that situation. It's kind of like if there's an energy, ball of energy or something, like a grounding rod, right, where it just kind of dissipates that energy. For me, my experience with it, I always would get a snapshot. It's always like, then I have to be like Sherlock Holmes, it's like, okay, I would see this one little scene, and it's like, well, the clock on the wall, it stopped at 2 o'clock, and so I know, it's always been that kind of an experience. One example, so I had moved from California to Minnesota. We built a temple in Chanhassen, Minnesota. And so this was back in like the 90s, 1990, I guess it was built. And so I wanted, I'm still in my 20s, I moved there thinking that, because the headquarters is there, and I just wanted to be around all that. And so I just think, I made this decision to do that. Well, like the first thing that happened was I got a phone call from an old friend that I didn't even know was living there, and she said, well, me and my husband are working on this play. It's a high school play, and we need a chief brown bear. Now, back then, my hair was long, and, people would just say, what tribe are you with? I mean, there was no question. And so it was like, okay, this is odd. So all of a sudden, I'm in this high school play being a chief brown bear. Well, the thing was, the Lakota Indians there were a little sensitive to the play because it was from the 60s, and there's a lot of Tonto talk and things like this, and which we could tone down and all. And so anyway, there was this connection with the Lakota Indians, which was kind of a sign, right? And so I needed some extra money. I wasn't making a lot of money then, so I got this paper route for an extra job, right? So, doing paper route in Minnesota in January and February, I was like, what was I thinking, right? But there was this one morning where it had snowed that night, and you know how it is with fresh snow, the way the crystals, it's still crystally, and the light reflects off it, and there was a full moon, and so I'm running around the streets doing my little route, and all of a sudden the scene opened up, and I knew it was me, and it was just a young American Indian, lad, and I was kind of playing. I was up on a ledge, But I saw my face, I saw my, I just looking into my eyes and stuff. That was it. That was just this little snapshot of it. But I knew that what was kind of coming through there was that was an important lifetime for me, and that that was like some kind of turning point in my journey, as soul. And I guess that this, and again, I don't mean to make this all about reincarnation, but and karma. But I guess one of the things with Eckankar is that, so if you're familiar with like Eastern religions and stuff, there's a term, the Wheel of 84, which is the wheel of rebirth, right? So there's a certain amount of rebirth that soul will go through in its journey. So it's really about, Eckankar is really about, okay, it's time to finish that up, right? So soul reaches a point. There is an end game to it. You just don't keep reincarnating. There is an end game where you come to a level of self-realization, taking responsibility and understanding that you're soul, right? And then God realization, these are kind of the terms where you're trying to put words to things, right? That's hard to explain, but when you really have that understanding of your relationship with God, and then ultimately the term we have is become a conscious co-worker with God, right? Because that's the ultimate, right? This kind of returning home to God, but now you're a developed soul or unfolded soul, which I know it's kind of a contradiction. You're an eternal being, but so there is an end game to it. So that's, so that was just a part of that cycle of learning that, it's like when you look through history, that is you, and especially like if you have strong like the Inquisition or periods of history and you have a strong like or dislike, that's probably a sign, right? But we were the Inquisitioners, and then we came back and we were the Protestant reformers, or whenever you look at these things, this is the cycle, and we created both good and bad karma too. That's how we learn. Again, it's a school, right? So we don't really have the idea of like sin or original sin or anything like that. It's because we created it, and you can bring that in. It's like I must these bad things have happened because I'm a sinner or whatever. But you can bring that same energy in even with reincarnation. It's like, I created, or karma, I created this bad situation in my life because I did bad, I'm bad. But so it's really learning to kind of love yourself, and it's like, no, you're here to learn these lessons, right? So you've done these, you've done good and bad, but ultimately you've unfolded to this point of being this vehicle. Now, that's the next step, right? Just being that vehicle for divine love. And kind of learning to live, not having to return back to this earthly world, right? If you don't, unless you choose to do so to serve. So I guess the other element then that, probably separates Eckankar is just this idea of having this inner and outer master, and what that really means. There was a quote. I don't know, I just grabbed it and I put it in here, and this was from a book. It's actually a book on dreams. We work a lot with dreams in Eckankar, but and this is the current living Eckmaster is Sri Harold Klemp, and he's been the living Eckmaster for about 40 years himself. So I'll just read this. And this is him talking, so when he says it may appear, the inner master might appear as him, that's what he's talking about. But as the Mahanta, he is the inner master. The inner master is not a physical being. It is someone you see in the inner planes during contemplation or in the dream state. He may look like me, or he may look like another Eckmaster, or he may even look the same as Christ. All it is really is the merging of the light and sound of God into a matrix, into a form which appears as a person. This then becomes the inner guide which steers a person through the pitfalls of karma, the troubles we make for ourselves through ignorance of the spiritual laws. So, again, a Christian will feel this closeness to Christ, right, and feel, have that same kind of experience. one of the experience I had, and kind of denoting, because I was having experience like in the dream state and stuff with the inner master. But so I was living in Hawaii again. This is a number of years ago. I had moved to Hawaii for a little while, and he had Harold had come to do a talk. It was a seminar, and so it was between sessions, and I was helping out. I'd volunteered to help out on stage, and so we were moving like where the piano was going to go and stuff. And I just thought they were doing it wrong. I'm still in my 20s. I'm still young, and you know. And I was just, they don't know what they're doing. You know, I'm just thinking this. You know, basically being a jerk, right? And so I was just, I was kind of frustrated. And so I walked around the corner, you know, because there was drapes on the stage, you know, and I walk around, and there was Harold Klepp standing there, and he was just looking at me, you know, and I knew instantly. It was this experience where I knew instantly he was reflecting back to me my state of consciousness right then, right, being kind of grumpy and mad, and I'm having this experience, but I'm aware there's a person he's talking to, and it's like a 90-degree angle. And it was a young lady, and it's funny because I know I would have known who it is, but it's kind of like blocked, so I don't know who it was, privacy or whatever. But I just remember her face was just full of love. I remember that expression, and this light kind of glowing around her, and she was looking up at Sri Harold like at that angle. And I knew her experience at that moment was he was looking directly at her and probably reflecting back to her state of consciousness, even while, you know, he was reflecting back to me mine. And it was interesting about this experience. It nagged me for years. I would contemplate on what it was, because I never felt any like guilt or shame or anything like that. You know, because basically the master catching me being a jerk, right? Because I just knew it was this idea, you know, that the master is with each. Well, Chila is what the term we use. It's just a spiritual student. He's with each one, you know, individually. And so it was just this illustration of that, right? Even though, yeah, this is the physical person, but it's like the blending of the spiritual, you know, and physical realms or whatever. And I knew there was something about just the experience. And now looking back, I know I was like out of the body. He lifted me like out of the body because I was perceiving it, but I wasn't, you know, that's why there was no guilt and there was none of that kind of emotional attachment to the moment. It was just seeing that moment. It was just something he wanted to share with me, you know, in that moment. One of my early experiences with that was with Paul Twitchell. And again, I'm reading the books, and so I have this dream, and I go through this little hole in the fence, because I knew that was his little house down there. There was this little cottage down there. And so I'm wandering around with him. He's doing chores, you know, he's vacuuming, he's doing the dishes, and I'm kind of just walking around with him. And we go under the car to change the oil, and so he asked me about some friends of mine, and they were into something called Est. I don't know if anybody remembers Est. Again, this is a long time ago, but the only thing I could think of saying was, oh, they talk a lot about commitment, you know, because that's the only thing that came to mind. And so Paul Twitchell goes, commitment. And he starts talking to me, and I knew he was giving me this discourse on commitment, but it was like the mute button was hit. You know, last thing I heard was commitment. And then I just saw his face, and we're under the car. There's the little light, you know, utility light, and I saw his face is just glowing, you know, and he's giving me this discourse on commitment, and you know, but I don't hear a word he's saying, you know. But anyway, we're back after that. We're back in the house, and at one moment, he's doing some ironing or something. I was looking at these pieces of artwork, and it hit me. It's like, oh, this is the master. And I said something. Well, anyway, I just remember I like had this recognition. That's the master. And I looked over at him, and our eyes met. And there's just this bond of love, right, between the master and the student. And we have a term for it. It's called the darshan, you know. And so that was one of those early experiences. Again, it was like, you know, once you make that connection, right, there's that love bond. So, again, there's another thing I get to contemplate on for decades, right? It's like, why did he give me a discourse on commitment? I'm not a flake, you know, or it's like, I can commit, you know. But I realized later, you know, it was a certain it is a certain challenge, for me at least in this lifetime, right? It's 'cause it's so easy to get distracted, you know, and especially, you know, you're on a spiritual path, and you know, if you're working out your karma, things get easier, you know, you get through that burden part of it. And so, you know, when things get easier, you kind of take your eyes off of the ball, right? You kind of turn your gut. You know, when you're struggling, it's like, God, you know, please help me through this, you know. But then things are easy, and it's like, oh, never mind, you know. and so I got it, you know. Again, it was for, you know, particular to me, you know, this idea of commitment. So it's like, okay, I'm still kind of working on that one. How are we doing on our time here? So like I said, I wanted to share just a little bit about, well, what is it like to be then an Eckist? You know, just our daily practice and things like that. Like I said, you know, there's a lot in that goes on in the dream state with Eckankar. Because the master can work with us a lot easier sometimes in the dream state, you know. So a lot of healing, working off karma in the dream state is a great one. So that you don't have to, if you don't have to go through it here in the physical, you know, it's great to be able to work things off in the inner. But I think the biggest thing that the dream study though is we definitely learn to interpret our own dreams. You know, there's a lot of dream books and things out there, and you might use those from time to time for certain things, but really we all have our own dream symbols is basically it, right? Like I know for me, one of the reoccurring ones is I'll be in a plane trying to fly, and I can't control the thing. I'm going all over, and then I'll reach over, grab the seatbelt, click it in. And the moment I click it in, it's like, all right, you know. So that would happen at certain periods of time. A lot of prophetic things, I guess. I know this makes it sound dramatic, but especially when I was younger, like, I get a crush on a girl or something. I would always have this dream, and it'd be like, you know, we're standing in front of a desk, and some gentleman is like looking over the records. You know, I always think like the karmic records, like, nah, this one's not going to work. Of course, I would never listen to it, and you know, it'd be a problem. You know, it'd be an issue anyway. But one of the things too is the waking dream. Something we call waking dreams and golden tongue wisdom. And this is when sometimes like an event happens in your life, and you maybe like will look at it symbolically like you would maybe a nighttime dream. What's the symbol behind it? You know, I'm sure you all had that experience. Something happens like, what's God trying to tell me with this dream? Or what's Spirit trying to tell me with this experience, right? Golden tongue wisdom is kind of the same. It's in the same vein, but this is more auditory, I guess. So you might be having some question about your life or something, and you'll be at the store. You might hear two people talking, totally unrelated to what you've been thinking about, but you know what something is said, and you know, okay, you know, that was my answer to the thing. So these are just some of the ways that, you know, Spirit will talk to us. So we do have membership in Eckankar. You don't have to be a member or anything, but with membership comes discourses. So we do study it. It's like a monthly letter type of thing that we study, and you can study it by yourself, or you can study it in a group. We call it satsang. But it's like each year. So you renew your membership each year, and then you get a new discourse each year, and that you study, you know, one a month type of thing. And there's like a rhythm to it. It's an eternal rhythm. It kind of, again, it's all being unfolded in moving through, you know, working through your karma and stuff. And we do have initiations in Eckankar. So the second initiation comes after a couple of years. You can request to have the second initiation. And kind of with that is that when you take that initiation, then you're off the wheel of 84. So you're going to finish up your karma in this lifetime, and you don't have to reincarnate again unless you choose to. So that's kind of a big one for us in Eckankar. Then the next kind of milestone is the fifth initiation, which would be on the soul plane. And I didn't really get into all the planes of existence and things like that. But that's kind of a big one too, a big step. And then the daily practices, and that's just what we call the spiritual exercises, and it's like the meditation that we just did. We call it contemplation. Sometimes that term meditation, again, it's all semantics. It doesn't really matter, but we don't really see that we become one with God in Eckankar. We become one with the essence of God. I look at it as like God's always kind of one step ahead, ever expanded. We're kind of expanding into it. So we use the term contemplation, but it's like many of the meditations you might do. Chanting of words, and then I guess just to leave off, that's one of our main elements of Eckankar is Hu, the Hu song. Hu is an ancient name for God. It's H-U, pronounced Hu. So we'll, we do a weekly service where we sing Hu for 20 minutes, and then there's a discussion afterwards. But for an Eckist, it just becomes second nature to sing Hu. Especially any kind of danger, anything like that, it's like an instant tap into the divine spirit. So I guess that brings us to 11 o'clock. Is that our time?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess again, I'm so used to doing. We're so conversational, anymore in our presentations, so it's like, oh, okay, go up there and talk for 30 minutes. I probably should be able to do that. But I think by the second half, there might be more time for conversation. But anyway, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yes, Daniel, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that. We will now close with our usual closing hymn, 414, as we leave this friendly place.
Okay. As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face.
May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. All right, so let's come back at 10 minutes, 11:12. Let's come back in about 10 minutes.